Your zone of excellence comes when you're in a space where you're really capable. But the downside to the zone of excellence is it doesn't actually light the fire in your belly. Stepping into the zone of genius means that when you're doing whatever you're doing, you've constantly got a smile on your face, right? Because that's where you're meant to be. The step from the zone of excellence to the zone of genius, these filled with uncertainty, unknowns, that fear element, all of those sorts of things, because you're in this comfortable space, right? Everything's familiar. The joy is in the journey, and the joy is in facing the fear and falling over.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Flow Over Fear. Thank you for joining us today. My guest today joins us from Western Australia. Her name is Niomi Hurley, and it takes a lot of courage to leave your secure, comfortable, and well-paying corporate job where you are one of the best in your field, to pursue your passion, to pursue a purpose that is greater than yourself, to help leaders to become their very best. And that is exactly what Niomi Hurley has done. She has risen above her fears to make the leap and live out her purpose. She's an organizational psychologist and clinical hypnotherapist who spent many years in the corporate world working in HR and safety management roles before completing a degree in psychology and getting qualifications in leadership and management. Her passion for personal growth within leadership and the power of the subconscious mind then saw her to continue her learning journey, and she became a clinical hypnotherapist, helping leaders in a new and unique way, which we'll talk about in a little bit. At this point, that's when she took that leap to leave her corporate day job and start her own business, which is called Get Up and Grow Consulting, and I've had the opportunity to see this grow over the last few years. Her mission is to spark curiosity, awareness, and growth in business and individuals that empowers them to move towards self-actualization and achieve more than they believed was previously possible and available to them. I'm so glad you've joined us today, Niomi. It's great to have you here. Thank you.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here, Adam. Thank you for the opportunity. It's always great catching up with you and working with you.
Absolutely. Well, we've been on multiple sides of the camera many times. And from, it's an amazing piece of technology where we can actually see each other from opposite ends of the world and share this time together many, many times, though we've never met in person. I hope to remedy that one day.
Yes.
But the first time that we met was actually at a virtual Tony Robbins event. In the midst of COVID, we were both at Business Mastery. We both shared a team. We were on the same team there, where we, set up a charitable foundation and we were able to raise some funds for some worthy causes. But the key thing was, I remember at that point that you were still, employed. You were still working for the corporate world. And I remember at that time, we got to know each other pretty well. You were dreaming up this idea of Get Up and Grow Consulting that would, that you wanted to start, that you wanted to help people in a certain way. And as I mentioned before, it takes a lot of courage to make that leap. So can you give us a little backstory on how your career shaped you and how you grew up, how your career shaped you and how you got into consulting?
Yeah, so you might have seen I actually still breathe in when I think of that, because it's something you feel through your whole body, right, when you make decisions like that. And I had established a really successful career in the corporate world. I was HR and safety manager for quite a large transport company. I'd established credibility with all of the clients within the company, was leading two really great teams in HR and safety, and had even recruited them with limited skills but for their personality, you know, for their attributes and their values. So I'd actually been able to help mentor them and get them into a place where they were performing really well. And it just kind of came to me and said, well, you know, you could do this on a grander scale. It's something, you know, you talk about being in a state of excellence and in that zone of excellence. And I was there. I was really good at what I did and I was known for it. But helping people and growing people sort of was a level up into my zone of genius. And when you're in your zone of genius, you just feel different. You know, you're feeling joy every time. It's not like you're working, right? You're there. So
Right.
I thought I really needed to do that for myself, and then also flow on to my family and my friends and all of my other relationships and the people that I help. And although it was a really big leap, I feel like I would have been doing a disservice to my purpose of being here if I didn't do it. So,
Sure.
you know, programs like Business Mastery and Unleash the Power Within and other training I did really prepared me for that and gave me, you know, that ability to step into the fear because I wasn't overcoming it. It's even in business, when you're running a business, whether it's large or small, there's fear all along the way, right? You're always experiencing it, but it's actually being able to step into it and kind of embrace it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you say that because that's something we try to focus on here is that you never overcome fear. And everybody talks about, you know, that's the goal, overcoming fear or, you know, getting over your fears or don't let fear stand in your way. But the reality is it's always with us. And if we're waiting for that time where fear is going to not be there anymore, then we're going to be waiting forever. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck is they don't realize that fear is there for them. So fear was there with you when you made that leap, but you leaped anyway. You went anyway. And how was that? How was that? Did that? Did the fear change at all? Did you experience it in a different way?
Yeah, I think if one word to say how that was uncomfortable. If I'm being honest, like just being in this uncomfortable space, not having the security of an income for starters. Also that sense of purpose. Like here I was known for what I did, and now I just work solo. No one to say you've done a great job. You're awesome. You know. So it was really uncomfortable, but part of the joy that I've received from it is moving through that. Because that's just showing me how capable I am and how much capability I have. So it every day along this journey, and I was speaking with some other business owners in a group we're in yesterday actually, that it's actually that part that actually then also gives us what we need to serve our clients because we have a better understanding of them. We're not, some of our clients might see us, especially when we're on the higher level of what we're doing and think, oh, they're a god or, how do they do this? But we do it just like everyone else, right? We come in and we face that.
So the client's being able to see us on our level. I love that because, that's powerful because that gives it a sense of relatability. And that's what we want to serve. I've heard before that we're all positioned to serve the people that we once were or that we are. And so serving those people, that's an excellent way of putting it. Yeah,
and I think when you come into that space, I mean, acknowledging that fear is helpful, right? Fear is there to help us. It was to help us in our primitive days of identifying threats and then engaging in them. And a little bit of fear is actually helpful for us now. And it's healthy to feel that. It gets the body pumping, it gets everything going and inspires you to go forward. But it's actually, if you're letting yourself be overcome by that fear, that's when it becomes unhelpful. And that's when there's so many people out there with strategies to help you actually just give you enough of that boost to go, right, I'm going to step into the unknown, because let's face it, that's probably the biggest fear. And just trust that, if I made this decision from my head and my body and my heart and it feels right, then that's what I need to do.
So it's having that trust in yourself. And having your trust in your capabilities in that zone of genius and the zone of excellence, as you say. And I really, that stuck out to me. How did you find your zone of excellence, and how do you think others would find their zone of excellence, and how could they apply it to their own lives?
Well, I think your zone of excellence comes when you're in a space where you're really capable. But the downside to the zone of excellence is it doesn't actually light the fire in your belly. Now, at some time it did, because that's what drove you to get into there. And so for me, safety in HR was always a passion of mine. And helping people, I was doing major investigations for truck and trailer rollovers, and I was really good at it. I was presenting to clients, really good at it. And I got to a point where I actually realised that I could do it with my eyes closed, right? So you're at your zone of excellence. But stepping into the zone of genius means that when you're doing whatever you're doing, you've constantly got a smile on your face, right? Because that's where you're meant to be.
I got you. So there's a distinction between that zone of excellence and the zone of genius. The zone of excellence is almost like you've reached the point at which you're bored, or you're doing something that you're max at your max capabilities, or where your max allowance. But your zone of genius is where that's what lights your fire. That's what people should be searching for. Is that right? That's what
awesome. I believe. And I think it's the step from the zone of excellence to the zone of genius that is filled with uncertainty, unknowns, that fear element, all of those sorts of things, because you're in this comfortable space, right? Everything's familiar. Someone throws a problem at you and you go, oh, problem, I've solved it. Whereas zone of genius is what is going to come at me. And then you got that self-questioning. Am I going to be able to cope with it? Well, I say yes, because even if you fall over, the scraped knees are learning for the next time, right? So you're always going to serve well, but it's trusting yourself to do that.
So it sounds like what's interesting there is that it sounds like fear lives in the zone of genius, but fear is almost absent in the zone of excellent. Maybe not absent, but just different, because there's an element of, well, there's no adventure in it. The zone of genius seems like there's adventure in it, right? Yeah. So that's really, really interesting. I'd love to hear how you get into the zone of genius, how other people could get into that zone, out of that excellence.
I think what I needed to do was I needed to shift my thinking. I needed to shift my mindset. And, I was raised to go get a job, go and build a house, all of those things that created structure and security and certainty in my life. And so that was kind of how I was wired on a subconscious level. And then when you get to that state of genius, and most of my clients on the individual side of things, in that state of excellence, they're there. They're doing really well, but something's missing. Like they're not going home fulfilled, or they're going home exhausted from their day because they've had to put too much energy in it. And they come to me to find out how they can actually shift whatever's holding them back to actually take that next step.
Yeah, and that's I think that's something that a lot of people run into nowadays, especially high achievers, is they work for the job, they work for the paycheck. And it's very similar to your story, where they get the recognition, they get to that point where they're the ones that are called for all of those problems. And then it just becomes, where's the fulfillment? They've reached that. But the reality is, and we hear it a lot, but we don't actually participate in it because we're looking for that title, we're looking for that paycheck. But then all of a sudden, we reach it and we're like, well, what's next? Growth the joy is in the journey.
Yes.
So I love that you make that distinction. Yeah.
And I think that's the key phrase. I might actually borrow that. But the joy is in the journey, and the joy is in facing the fear and falling over. And I usually say to my clients when they are in that state of fear, I go, you can list off all the things that could happen. Why is there fear there? And one of my clients I was speaking to wanted to launch a new business online. And they were saying to me, there's going to be people that don't like my work. And I just looked them straight in the eye and I went, yes, that's true. And and it was just accepting that, yes, all those things can happen. But if they do happen, then what's the worst? You already know that there's going to be people that don't like it. They're not your ideal client. Move past them. You already know that you might make typos in your socials post. People know you're real. There's authenticity. So it doesn't matter what our brain can create. It's really not, when you really sit down and analyze it, the consequences of it aren't usually death-defying, unless you're doing something really extreme, obviously. But, in our day-to-day.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's another fear that comes up from that is, that I find, especially in the leaders, is the fear of being disliked. because we have this, we need to be part of a tribe, especially, and this is how we're wired subconsciously. Primarily, we needed to be part of a tribe to survive, right? So once we're in a position where someone doesn't like us, that threatens our ability to be part of the tribe, to, hunt, eat, be looked after, be protected from predators. So in this day and age, though, when we reframe that, there's an old cat lady that can get online shopping now. She doesn't need to leave a house. She can live alone and she survives. So it's just trying to rewire some of that subconscious programming.
Sure. Yeah. And I can definitely relate to that fear of being disliked. I mean, I still struggle with that to this day. I mean, I just don't, and it's amazing what the brain does. I mean, yes, of course we're afraid of things that, might kill us, but the idea of oh man, you'd mentioned the grammatical errors on social media. It's like, I get so afraid to post something because, man, did I use the right version of your in that, or the right version of there? Somebody's going to skewer me for it. Really, what's the end of the world? Is it the end of the world? But yeah, you're right. It's like we do want to be part of a tribe. It's that natural tendency, but man, it's like we want that tribe to be everybody. We don't want to exclude, and so we're afraid that if by losing one person, we lose everybody. But it seems like the reality is that if we lose, if we gain the right small tribe and even maybe exclude the wrong people, then we can be much happier.
Yeah, and we can serve at a higher level, and I feel because we've shifted out of that space, the fear isn't driving us anymore, and we're pushing through that. And so when we serve, we're coming from that place of authenticity. We've got, one of the issues that comes up, I see with leaders sometimes with performance management discussions, right? Everyone sees performance management as a negative. They're trying, I'm in trouble. But really it should be seen as, how can you serve your people? How can you help them grow? How can you help them develop? But having those conversations, because there's that fear of being disliked, people tend to come into it with emotion. And when we're speaking with people, if someone comes at you and talks with emotion, it's kind of like how a horse can sense fear, right? Straight away. Right. And that can become quite triggering. And then the conversation is just about each person's emotions coming through and trying to have a win. Whereas when you can be comfortable in that space, or comfortable in the uncomfortable, and sit there and actually say, well, what's my purpose here? My purpose is to help them. This isn't for me to have a win. And you can strip that emotion away. Then the conversation becomes, how can we help each other develop further? And it's a different space to be in.
Okay. Yeah. So, how do you, because I know that dealing with the emotion is always very difficult, but how do you deal with that emotion and take it out and rise above that fear of just of getting through that emotion and getting to the root of the problem?
So this is probably one of the bases of the hypnotherapy work I do. It's a method called Rapid Transformational Therapy, or RTT for short. It was founded by Marissa Peer in the UK, and it's just phenomenal. It's absolutely amazing. So what we do is we go back into the subconscious and we go, okay, there's this, thing holding you back here. So when something holds us back and it threatens our identity or our safety, we automatically come from a place of fear or frustration or sadness. Okay, so emotion just comes out. So we go back and we go, okay, why was that established in the subconscious? Why is that actually there in the first place? And then once we identify it, we can move it on. And the thing about the subconscious that some people may or may not realize is when it actually is programmed. So say something happens to me at the age of 4 and then it's reinforced over 10, 11, 12. My subconscious mind grabs it at the age of 4. And at that cognition of a 4-year-old stores it in that if you don't do this, you won't be safe. And when you go in through the hypnotic state and you can actually address that, you reshift it into the cognition of the adult you are. And then you can actually process it a lot more effectively.
I see. So it is a reprogramming, and it's a reprogramming at the subconscious level.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Definitely. Yeah. So then, and I know a lot of people, when they hear that, when they hear hypnosis, they're thinking, oh, okay, here we go. Some kind of, in the pie in the sky kind of thing, of course. But there is science behind that. I mean, that programming at the subconscious level, I mean, that is scientific and it is how we really develop our paradigms, our beliefs, our fears, everything in there. And so reprogramming at that level in a safe and secure environment is a huge way to overcome that. And you've had a lot of success with that kind of therapy.
Yeah, a lot of success. And just going back to that point that you were saying about it being, seen sometimes to be a bit woohoo. I know when I first started on this journey, I used to use, I'll take you into a meditative state, because people accepted that more. And so part of my journey over since I started my business was actually coming through and being more authentic and going, I don't care if people dislike me because I do hypnosis, right? Or judge me because this is who I am. And so when you go into those places, it's just going in and, like you say, reprogramming the brain. And if you look at not just the science, but also the practical application, so many sports teams, sports stars, high performance executives and CEOs, they all use hypnosis to get them into the right state before they go in and go to perform, because it can increase your performance as well, with how you're thinking and how your brain controls the rest of your body and your emotions.
Yeah, I certainly believe it. I'm a huge advocate for that kind of stuff. I mean, especially within the realm of not just mental health, but continuing to lead effectively. Being a good leader, I mean, it's something that's powerful that really hasn't been explored. Not to go off on too much of a tangent, but within the world of mental health, there's so much within the medical industry that's limited. We're starting to open up these things now, which is exciting. Hypnosis, psychedelic treatments, those kinds of things. It's powerful, and I love seeing what these can do, and I wish more leaders would embrace those kinds of ideas. So I think that you're doing some great work there. So kind of getting into that subconscious area of fear, is there anything, short of hypnosis, is there anything that we can do when we're leading and when we're faced with those kinds of fears of pleasing people or anything like that we can do to try and get past that, to really push beyond our own limits?
Yeah. So the people that I work with, and I do the hypnosis as well in the corporate space as well in groups, which is just really super powerful to try and shift that. But with individual clients and with corporate clients, the three key things that come up is whatever has presented in their subconscious has made them feel unsafe, has made them feel unloved, or has made them feel unworthy. And fear is just coming up, and it's reminding us of one or a combination of those things whenever we're facing something. So when I went to go and start my own business, it was, if you call yourself a hypnotherapist, you'll be unloved. You're unworthy of being able to do something you love and make bulk amount of money, right? You'll be alone because people won't be with you. And so on that subconscious level, it's being able to sometimes consciously tell yourself, I am safe. And this is what I was saying before, reframe it. What is the worst that can happen? And you are worthy to be given an opportunity, and that opportunity be in front of you. You're worthy of it, or it wouldn't be there. So to sort of push in and just move into that space and give it a shot.
So so really it's an empowerment mode of convincing yourself you're worthy, you're enough, and knowing that you are. I mean, that is a challenge for a lot of leaders too, to really address that imposter syndrome. And I've heard that on most of the interviews I've done thus far is that idea that once we get into this point, we feel like we're imposters. It's one of our bigger fears, because Hugh Edwards, who I had in the podcast recently, had said this, that it was actually very freeing when he said this, and I'm going to steal it, but he said that when we're feeling that, what really happens is we're recognizing that really nobody, we're all winging it. We're all kind of winging it. Nobody really knows exactly. There's no manuals to this leadership thing, and so if we're in our zone of excellence, clearly there's this point where we're not pushing hard enough because we need to be in that imposter syndrome in order to. If we're not feeling that, maybe we're in that zone of excellence. I mean, does that resonate? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I talk often to about imposter syndrome. And, if you're in a room, you're in a boardroom or a meeting room at a sporting club, wherever you are, and you're in that room and you feel like you're not worthy to be there, and what if I make a mistake? I'll be discovered that I'm not perfect, because there's a lot of perfectionism around imposter syndrome as well. And a lot of achievers experience that because they want everything to be right on point. But when you're in the room and you look around, you can probably talk to this, Adam, but there's at least one person in the room that you look at going, how did you get here? How did you get in this room, right? They don't have really a lot to bring. What they say doesn't fit, but everyone still nods. They might not have the skills or the experience, but they're there. And the whole difference between why they're there and why you're feeling like you shouldn't be there pretty much is they believe they should be. That's the only reason they're there. Mm-hmm. It's not because of their capabilities, because they're obviously not. It's just purely they believe that they should be. And so they sit there quite confidently.
Yeah, I find that very therapeutic often to look at those folks and say, okay, if they can be here, clearly I could be here. Because I've definitely experienced that. And to their point, I mean, I think you're right. That confidence plays such a big role. Confidence and persistence are highly underrated skills in this world today. And to that end, giving into that imposter syndrome or letting that guide our decisions is probably one of the most tragic things that happens in our society, because how many great ideas have gone unfulfilled because somebody just thought, I'm not the right one to do this, or I'm not the right, person for this. Yeah. But man, it's, so I wonder, but for you did that because you recognized you were in that zone of excellence. And then you had you wanted to take this leap, and even though you'd mentioned that you were the sole breadwinner for your household, and you were making a good income, you were doing all of these great things, but you overcame that fear and went anyway. And so when that process happened, when you made that initial leap, I kind of want to jump around that. How was that for the first year? What was it like within that first year? Were there times where you were like, I just can't do this anymore? Were there times where you were like, this is awesome?
Definitely. And my husband was working as well, so I was probably the primary income earner. So we did have some income, but it didn't match our standard of living and all of those things that we were used to, right? So I felt like by doing this, I'm also having my family have to make sacrifices. So I'm letting them down. So there's that pressure of fear of being disliked hidden in letting people down. And the first step I took is when I came out, I had established myself, as I said, with a whole heap of credibility with a range of people in different industries, mainly mining industries. I was working in the transport industry, and I was on a transport industry association. I had heaps of contacts. So I did what you do, right? Ask your friends for help. That's what they say when you first go into business. So I emailed everyone, told them what I was doing, all this sort of stuff. I got all these emails going, you'll be awesome at that, Niomi. Have no hesitation of, you knowing that you're going to succeed. But not one person engaged me. Not one person went to work. And that was just a real slap in the face of, I think this is going to be easy. So that was my first thing I had to overcome, that I'm going to have to create this. It's not going to be given to me. Did I think about getting a day job? Probably in the early days, probably about once a month. I thought, have I done the right thing? And then as I went searching through Seek, looking for what was advertised, I'm looking at the job going, no, what are you doing? And I would push it down. I have... At the start, it was really high highs and really low lows. But over time, that itself has given me the tools and the strength and the self-belief to now, when I'm facing a low, I actually can snap myself out of it. Go, hang on, take a breath. You've been here before. You don't need to go there. You've got a lot to give. So I value those moments because that's what strengthened the muscle, to get me to where I am now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's huge for people that might be listening, thinking they got it. They have to take that leap. They want to take that leap. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that have these ideas, have these mission driven, messages that they want to share with the world, but they're afraid to because they're in that safe and secure spot. And I want them to hear stories like yours, because it's very important that, they understand that those beginning stages, yes, they're very lonely. They're very, they're very empty. It's shouting into the wind, or shouting, into the empty void. But eventually, and at some point, it starts to trickle in, and you start to experience that success. And I was so fortunate to see your growth and your trajectory since the very beginning. And that was so great, because just watching you have this great idea of what you wanted to achieve, leaving your job, jumping out into this jumping out into this world of the unknown, and then building it into what you have, and seeing your success forums grow as well. I've been on a couple of your success forums, which are these great full day events, where you bring in speakers and you share. It's been neat to see those grow too. Can you tell us about how those are doing and what's coming with those?
Yeah, so I really love those. One of my another place I'm in my genius is getting people together, collaborating, referrals, all those sorts of things. I love seeing people grow, and it doesn't mean they have to sign up with me to do it. It's connecting them with the right people, and that's what the success forums do. And I'm able to run them with technology, thank you, getting speakers in from all over the world, such as yourself, and stream it online and also have it in person. So it was a little bit, it was a little bit challenging when COVID came to Western Australia. So we were right behind the rest of the world. We were kind of in a little bubble. We even cut our borders off from the rest of the country to keep us safe. So when they opened those borders, there was the mask mandates, all that sort of stuff come in just as I was running a forum. Right. So that taught me to pivot, right? Because I didn't have enough people in the room to make it really viable. So I thought, why don't I stream online as well? And there's mixed, people have their own self-belief systems, and I think we're all entitled to that. So there was some people that didn't want to follow the mandates that were given by the government for their own personal reasons. And so I thought that would give an opportunity for inclusivity, right? So everyone could attend. But I suppose that's where that shifting that focus, like I went in, I didn't get the ticket sales. I could have sat there and really felt sorry for myself, which I did a tiny bit, if I'm being honest. But then it came the time to pull it out and go, no, what are you going to do? And when you move out of that place of a catastrophe, I suppose, for lack of a better word, you get clarity. You come up with different ideas. You can think differently. And so we've got another one actually coming up early in the new year. So thank you, Adam, for putting your hand up again, which would be fantastic. And I hope to run them at least a couple of times a year, because it also gives people access to the kind of people like us that are able to share at a minimal expense. When someone gets really good at what they do, obviously their value financially goes up as well, and some people can't access those services. So I feel like in that forum space, it gives all people of backgrounds of all kinds to be able to access those quality people and their messages.
Yeah. And that's what I've found too with watching those is you're bringing so much into that. It's like a holistic whole life experience, and I really enjoyed it. And I remember that COVID experience, how quickly it hit, and you scrambled, but you pulled it off. And that's a testament, I think, really to a lot of the businesses during that time. A lot of people were complaining, and I get it. When things threaten your business, it stinks. When things threaten our livelihoods, it stinks. But those who were successful adapted, and I think those who thrived adapted, which is exactly what you did. And then your next event became even more successful because you were able to do virtual and in person that time again, and it worked out really well.
Yeah, and I remember one event last year, I had all planned and all had ready, and I actually got COVID. So we had restrictions around leaving the house, and I had to pivot again and go, okay, this one's just purely online. I can't do it in person. So,
right.
It's understanding though that if you're in a place where it does get you down, that's okay, because it's meant to. Because growth doesn't come from a place of comfort. It comes from being uncomfortable. And, you know, it's just not unpacking and staying there. You know, making sure, and it's always got something to teach us. And I tell this especially to my kids, you know, if they're feeling sad or they're feeling like something's there, feel it. What's it trying to teach you? What's it trying to give you? And then there comes a point where I'm like, all right, come on, this is getting, you know, a bit rough now. How are we going to change it? How are you going to reframe and move forward? But some of the clients that I see, unfortunately, we had a generation where we wouldn't let people feel, right? So we pushed everything down, and then it becomes stuck in energy bodies and body systems and reframing in the brain, all those sorts of things. Then we switched, and then we have a generation where we're saying, feel, it's okay to feel. These people don't know how to turn off their feelings, right? And then we have a space where we've got increased mental health issues and people that have limited coping skills and able to adapt to life. And I'm hoping that from the influence of myself and other leaders like you in this environment, that we can help shift that a little bit more for the next generation to go, how about we combine those and get a balance? You know, how about we feel and be there, but then move on and create our capabilities and get past that?
That's really great advice. That's a great way to look at how to do that. And I'd never heard it put that way before, and it's really profound the way, you know, you mentioned that we have a generation that was trained not to feel. And, you know, I think being a product of that generation, especially in our younger age, it's like, all right, well, that led to a lot of pent-up anxiety. And I remember how that hit me when I was in college. And it leads to abuse and things like that. Yeah. I can relate with, you know, my kids and how they feel. It's a lot, but so that balance is really important and needed there. So I think, you're finding that balance within the leadership generation as well is going to be important.
Yeah. And I mean, most of the leaders now, except for the up and coming great inspiring leaders, which I love working with, but at a high corporate level, let's admit it, majority are of that middle age sort of realm. So, you know, they're the kids that were brought up, I'll give you something to cry for, you know, like you can't feel emotions. And the only reason our parents did that is because they didn't know how to feel emotions. So that put them in an uncomfortable space, you know, but actually giving space for our kids to be able to feel, and even the people we work with, giving them that space to feel, but then giving them the tools to actually create their resilience and go back to their coping skills is just gold, I think. And I think that's part of the evolution of humans as well, that we go through all that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Space and tools. Give them the space, but give them the tools. Not either or. Not neither, but both. I love that. Yeah. So, and so what's next for Niomi? What's next for you? What are you working on now? What's coming up the pike?
Obviously, I take a deep breath in again, because everything that you think of comes with all of that fear. But look, what's next for me is, my mind is always going on how I can serve. And so I have, I've got some really great leadership programs I'm working with a business with locally, which is just really great. And it's actually going in and giving the team training, but actually doing some subconscious programming along the way, right? Like the Dealing with Difficult People course I put together, people come into that, and most of that course is, okay, so why do they trigger you? What's going on within you? And so it's changing the face of people, that when they go into the environment, it's less about the people around them and more about how they present, how they come into the world. And so then they can actually level up their leadership. But going through all of the psychological aspects as well of, you know, conformity, why people perform the way they do in groups, all of that to give their leaders some sort of insight into their teams and how they can get the best out of them. And when I first started my business, I wanted to serve the world. I had no niche. I didn't want a niche because that would exclude people. But over time, I've really found that my passion and my skill set really thrives when I'm working with leaders and working in the corporate world still. So you can take the girl out of corporate, you can't take corporate out of the girl, right? So I'm actually developing some programs at the moment, which will be like a membership, again, for people that have some limited affordability, so they can still access some of the information that I share. Forums are still going to go ahead. I've got some online trainings and things that I'm doing, and also the individual services, because some of these people that I'm involved with corporately then go, well, I want to get rid of these subconscious programming, which is where the availability for one-on-one sessions comes in. And the ability to do that as well over Zoom or in person is great, because it doesn't limit the people that I can help, which is just awesome.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. And I know you mentioned in there, I heard it loud and clear, but I know you kind of glossed over it, was the Dealing with Difficult People course. I love that idea. So could you just basically just give a quick shout out on that? Because I think there's a lot of leaders that can benefit from it.
It's because we go into the place, we don't deal with, this is the thing, leaders don't deal with difficult people. A lot of the time, not saying everyone, and then that creates people in the workplace that aren't performing, that then pisses off the people that are performing, and then you lose talent or you just lose productivity, right? So the Dealing with Difficult People course goes into more looking internally. So it looks at personality testing, what personality they come at. I go through Tony Robbins' 6 core needs, certainty, uncertainty, growth, all of those sorts of things to help them get an understanding of why they come in and present the way they do. I also talk about the 4 core roles that Marissa Peer teaches, which is the sick one, the rebel, the achiever, or the carer. So people are either one or a combination of those, and understanding why you're one of those and why subconsciously you're wired that way can then also help you understand why other people are wired that way, right? So when they come, they don't trigger you. It's not like, they're not trying to compete with me. They can't help it. That's their subconscious wiring, And so moving through that space and then going into, okay, here's some techniques that you can help also now deal with people of all of those different traits and when they're displaying those needs. So it's really, it's sell them what they want, give them what they need kind of course, if I'm being honest. Yeah.
Well, that's why I wanted to touch on it, because I know that that's a lot of what's ignored in the corporate world is looking at, the folks, you said it so perfectly, the fact that we're tolerating maybe the people that we shouldn't be tolerating at the expense of the people that are really, really building the company. And we're going to lose that talent if we don't address that and we don't nip that stuff in the bud. So dealing with difficult people, I think that there's a ton of value in a course just like that. So, and they can find that at your website?
Yes, if they go to getupandgrowconsulting.com.au, they'll find a whole range of courses that I do. And I think traditionally training in leadership, when we talk about, it's been traditionally around like the Myers-Briggs personality testing or actually, which I do touch on, but all personality testing. But we're never actually told that that's not fixed, right? And I think as well, our generation, a lot of us were raised in this fixed mindset environment with you are who you are, you do what you do, you get a job. But shifting into more of that growth mindset, which is covered in this course as well, that actually then tells us that this isn't who we are. This is who we're programmed to be right now. And everything's malleable. Everything's changeable.
Yeah, we're always fluid, always changing. I love that. So that's it's great work that you're doing here, because you're getting to the root of true leadership, which is personalities, managing our own personalities, managing our feelings, managing all of our fears, and all of those things that seem to be a limiter within our minds, but actually become an asset. And you're turning them into an asset. I think you're doing wonderful work, Niomi. And I hope people look you up. Like you said, they can find you at getupandgrowconsulting.com.au. And anywhere else that they can find you? Where else can people find you?
Got profiles on socials. I've got a company and a personal profile on LinkedIn. Love for you to reach out and connect. Always happy to connect with some like-minded people. I love that. And Instagram and Facebook as well, if people are using those platforms too.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Niomi. This was excellent. There's a ton of value here, and I wish you so much success in what you're doing. And based on what I've seen thus far, you're gonna hit the moon, and you're gonna help a lot of people along the way. So thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you, Adam. Thank you for not only having me on, but also being a fan, and a support and someone I can reach out to. I really appreciate you and I value you. Thank you.
Anytime. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you liked this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.